Well, welcome to the 17th webinar in the coffee series, sponsored by the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership at Seton Hall University. I'm Reggie Lewis, the center's executive director, and it's great to greet you from our campus here in South Orange, New Jersey. The coffee series provides an opportunity to showcase the inspirational stories of servant leaders and the endless ways in which individuals, organizations, and society in general can be transformed by the power of servant leadership, a philosophy in which the leader first seeks to serve. And let me assure you that our guest today will not disappoint. And later today in our program, you'll hear more opportunities about ways in which you can become involved with our center here at Seton Hall. But first, a quick word about our sponsors. Today was made possible by the generous support of one of the center's esteemed trustees, Mr. Jason Hope, who matched the gift of a long-standing champion of servant leadership and a friend of the Greenleaf Center. Thank you so much to Jason and to our dear friend. Let's begin with a brief introduction of our distinguished guest today. Mac Tristan is a 38-year law enforcement veteran with over 25 years of command rank experience, who has successfully led and transformed the cultures of two police organizations. Mac began his career with the Carrollton, Texas Police Department and rose through the ranks before leaving as an assistant police chief after 30 years of service. Mac left Carrollton to become the Coppell, Texas Chief of Police on January 24th, 2011, and served the city of Coppell for 8 years, retiring in November of 2018. While at Coppell, Mac worked at building a great culture of service to its citizens, community, and its employees. Mac received his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Sam Houston State University, where he graduated with honors. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy, the Senior Management Institute for Police, the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and the U.S. Army War College Strategic Implementation Seminar. Since retiring from full-time work, not that Mac is really retired, Mac continues to lecture on leadership, problem-oriented policing, changing organizational cultures, and the servant leadership style of management to police organizations and private corporations throughout the country, actually throughout the world. Mac has worked with both the Chinese and Swedish National Police. And Mac, I gotta make sure you're ready on that end. If you got your mug, are you ready to go?
I am ready. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump right in, and just so that our audience will be aware, our initial interview, which will last about 20 minutes or so, so you'll have an opportunity to ask Mac plenty of questions, and you can feed them into our Q&A feed. But we're going to have an interview on 3 categories: formative years in education, career highlights and significant milestones, and you're going to hear there are many significant milestones, and then our closing session on servant leadership and society. But Mac, full disclosure, I got to tell you, around the ages of 10 and 12, I fantasized about becoming a Mac Tristan. I wanted to be a police officer. I was influenced by Adam 12, the Rookies, Chips, and the California Highway Patrols, Hawaii Five-0. I also had 2 uncles who were my role models who retired from the DC Metro Force. One who was the first officer friendly for the DC public schools, and another who retired from the SWAT team. So I wanted to be where you ended up, but I'm curious, my friend, what influenced your decision to become a police officer?
Well, thank you so much, Reggie, and to the center for having me again this year. It's quite a shocker when, as you're introducing me, my picture comes up. I'm like, whoa, that's a big picture. I mean, it kind of scared me a little bit, but These conversations are important. It's important that we have a discussion and a dialogue about the tough questions, about the tough issues, about identifying stakeholders and bringing them into the conversation. So I'm very proud of the center for doing this. I had a passion, I had a calling, I had great mentors that were doing this, like you. I was an athlete in high school, and I thought I was going to go play college ball, which I did for 1 year, and then I thought who knows where I'd go from there. But policing was something that and many people have said it smarter than I. You have to have a passion and a calling for it. And that's what I had. And I that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be a patrol officer at 1 Adam 12, all of those things. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to work with people. I want to talk with people. And for me, that was a challenge because I'm naturally an introvert. Now, through the years, I can speak and I can do, I've spoken to over hundreds of people, and I can do that. But an introvert gets drained from having to do that. An extrovert gets energy from doing that. So at the end of whether I do a 2-hour talk or a 4-hour class or a 6-hour, 8-hour class, I'm wiped because I've given everything I've got. So I really had to work at how do I build these relationships and connect with people and get out of my own little world and connect with others. It was just something that I had a passion for, and I thought I could do it, and I thought I wanted to contribute to my communities. I grew up in South Texas, deep South Texas. I mean, another 20 minutes from where I grew up is Mexico. And I saw a lot of, like many people in our country, I saw some practices that didn't seem right to me in policing, and how the white police officers were treating Hispanic minorities, and how just because you spoke Spanish and had a skin color that was different than theirs, they assumed you were Mexican and they were going to take you across the border. It was just not right. So I wanted to be a part of change. I wanted to be a part of doing better and serving my community. And that's kind of what got me there. Yeah.
Well, I never pegged you as an introvert, my friend, and clearly you've had an impactful career. Sticking to the category of formative years, though, who were some of the leaders you looked up to during your formative years? You froze on me just a bit. Are you?
I'm here.
Yep, there you go. There you go.
I've been blessed with having some great leaders and great mentors in my career. I believe that I'm always leery when you meet someone, they say, well, I'm mentoring 20 people. Okay, first of all, if you're a true mentor, you don't really know, right? You don't really, you don't go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm gonna mentor you. Well, no, I don't want you to. Or it's kind of like saying I'm a great leader. That's not for you to say. That's for others to say. And I have had great people in my life and my career, from high school teachers to coaches to college influences. And in my career, my very first police chief in Carrollton was an extraordinary visionary. He was a professional, and he wanted a professional police department. And he really impacted how I saw myself and how we should carry ourselves. He wasn't the most interpersonal guy. I kind of compared him, if you remember Tom Landry, he was a visionary, but he didn't really connect with his team. He was very stoic, and that's the way this man was. But he influenced me a great deal, followed by then my next police chief, who was David James, and he introduced servant leadership to me, followed by Ann McGee Cooper, followed by all of these people that just came into my lives. And when you're looking for inspiration, when you're looking for people that you said, that's it, they get it, you have to be willing, first of all, to be paying attention, because they can be right in front of you. You don't even like, it's all right, I'm not going to go that route. But then you have to reach out, you have to connect, and you have to work at finding that person. Say, I just need to talk to you for a minute. And I was influenced by so many great people. Colleen Barrett of Southwest Airlines, that I connected with her early in my career. And it's just, I can't tell you how it happened. It happened. And I am grateful for it because I continue to look for these people and I find them when you're not even paying attention and looking. So that's kind of how I grew up and found people that said, yep, that's who I want to be like, or that's what I want to learn from. We also learn from bad leaders, all of us. You know, I remember seeing leaders and I'm like, I will never do that, or I can't believe that's happening. So we learn from bad leaders as well. And I've had a great opportunity to learn from all of them.
It's so great that you've been richly blessed with the solid examples that you just named. Indeed, a blessing. We'll shift now to career highlights and some of the great things that you've done. And I'll begin by giving our audience a bit of context. Many consider you, Mac, to be a reform-minded law enforcement executive. And among the many changes instituted at Coppell, Texas Police Department include closing the city's jail, the creation of a new combined dispatch center. As a former city administrator, I know that is really a big deal to combine dispatch functions, but also you instituted new innovative practices in hiring, training, and policing. And we know, all of us know, change is hard. How did you utilize servant leadership to create a buy-in for these kinds of significant changes, and ultimately the kinds of changes that were institutionalized in a way that essentially outlived your tenure?
Well, I think that, first of all, programs, particularly in law enforcement, they come and go. You know, people don't get really inspired by programs. We had some real challenges when I first got to Coppell on how we improve the level of service, how we improve our own performance, how we improve our service to the community. And there were certain things that had to be done. Closing the jails are probably one of the most, if not the most, high risk liability actions and responsibilities that any police agency has, because once I arrest somebody, I'm taking their liberty away, I'm taking their freedom away, and I'm putting them in this little cell, and they're my responsibility. If somebody hurts themselves in jail, hangs themselves in jail, you're liable. And so those are huge areas of risk. We weren't good at it. And as Jim Collins used to talk about, your hedgehog, what are you good at? What's your wheel? What did he call it? I lost the name. And so we found an agency that was better at it than we were. And so we partnered with them and sent all of our prisoners in there. The dispatch center was simply a means of cutting costs and being better, and by combining with other cities that we were already connected to, and all of those things were great. Now, what was happening that was happening as soon as I got to Coppell. So yes, there was police officers, there was employees that are like, well, we're losing our identity. We don't have dispatch anymore. We're not a real police department, whatever that meant. So the way, and change is hard. Every police executive has heard the saying that cops hate two things. They hate change and they hate the way things are. So that's kind of a tough position that you're placed in, right? So the important thing is to always explain the why. Why are we doing this? How will this make us better? So we can concentrate on the things that we really are good at. And that's the servant leadership part, is explaining, as the great I believe, oh gosh, what was his name? Oh my gosh, I use his work all the time. I can't find his notes. Anyway, you have to show people why this is important. What is it that you're doing, and how does that connect with your job? You know, why is this paperwork important? Why is this task important? Because the more they understand that, the more likely they are to do a better job. Peter Drucker just came to me. So you're connecting the work with the purpose. You explain why this goal is important, this task is important, and how it allows us to accomplish the other goals that we are trying to accomplish. So it was a matter of constantly explaining the why to people. Why are we doing this? How are we doing this better? How is this going to make us better? And it worked. And the whole goal was to continue to have a vision and say, we're here and we want to get there. So how are we going to do that? And what things do we need to do to get us there together? And we have to identify obstacles and hurdles that are going to prevent us. But as long as we're all in sync with that vision, then everybody can work on getting us there. And I worry and I'm concerned that too many police agencies, too many just organizations don't have that vision of where you're going to go. There's an old saying is, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, right? So it's important to have that vision to connect with your everyday activities in order to get us to that vision. So that's kind of how we did it, and it worked. We succeeded. And it was a lot of headaches, man. It was hard. It was not.
I can imagine. Help us understand how long it took to really see that vision, to get that, to utilize that trait of persuasion, right? Because you can't just have a bunch of dictates, right? Was it a 1 to 3 year cultural shift? Like when did you think things started to sink in for folk?
Well, for us in Coppell, I believe our culture changed in record speed. Experts and consultants and all of these academics will tell you it'll take 5 to 10 years or whatever to change your culture. Our culture changed within 2.5 and 3 years. Wow. And I remember when I got there, I did not know this, but the police officers and employees were having arguments behind the scenes, and they call it drinking the Tristan Kool-Aid. They'd say, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. You drank the Kool-Aid. I'm not going to be a part of it. And I had my innovators and early adapters that were saying, I don't care what you call it. I believe in this and we're going to do it. Well, within 2.5 and 3 years, you didn't even heard the word Kool-Aid anymore. Okay. The laggards, those 16% of the organization that was just angry, that didn't want to do anything. I say that some cops will spend 8 hours a day trying to get out of 15 minutes of work, and advice to everybody in this country, really. Well, those people left, and because they didn't want to be a part of it. And we had these crucial conversations where I would meet with them or their supervisors would meet with them, and we'd say, Reggie, you're an important part of this organization. I want you to be a part of this, but you don't seem happy. So if you're going to work here, this is where we're going. You don't want to be a part of that? God bless you. Go find someplace else.
Okay. Wow.
And they left. It was the crazy thing. They left because we made it clear, if you're going to be here, this is what's required. So you need to take that responsibility to say what's best for you and your family and your career. And they were gone. So we changed in record speed, but the bad news is that it's every day. So one thing can happen and you're back to where you were. And every time there's change in the organization, whether change of the chief or new promotions or people leave and new people come in, it's going to disrupt the dynamics of that algorithm of that perfect team, and you got to start all over again. So it is constant, and that's the bad news of leadership, but it's worth it in the long run.
But the reality, right, that it's about continuous improvement, and you're right, with respect to law enforcement, one bad incident could cause major regression.
And one bad incident in another part of the country. It will impact us. I think I said this last time, that the way policing is looked at in this country is if you go to a Chili's and get bad service there, you're not going to go protest at the Applebee's. Well, it doesn't work that way for policing. I had nothing to do with Memphis. I had nothing to do with Minneapolis, but we're all painted with the same broad brush. So we have to own up to that responsibility.
Speak to one particular reform in policing that sort of gets lost in some of these more recent conversations, and that's the use of data. When I was town administrator, we adopted CompStat, and we were able to, down to the neighborhood and census tract, pinpoint those areas that required a reallocation of resources. Talk about your experiences with that.
Well, we called it intelligence-led policing. We called it problem-oriented policing, where you're doing exactly that. That data is vital to any police agency. You have to examine it daily. You have to put out that information daily, and people have to buy in for it.
Right.
You can create the greatest hotspot map and purvey and these predictable things and put it out to patrol. If they choose to do nothing with it, it's worthless. So you have to explain again the why of this is important. And we were blessed with a great crime analyst. The man was a genius. His name's Jim O'Connor, and I called him my genius. He was civilian, but he could predict. He even showed a chart where when traffic activity by police officers at night, being aware and pulling over the suspicious vehicle, not arbitrary stops, but stops because of a violation or whatever. When that activity was high, crime was low. When self-initiated activity like that dropped, crime went up. And it was just a fascinating correlation of how the impact of what that patrol officer does impacts the overall crime and how that happens and the opportunity for crime. So cities, these bad guys are going to come in. And if they see police officers in certain areas, they're just go to the city next door and do something else. So absolutely, data was vital in everything we do. It directed us. It's not the end all. You have to still have gut feelings, I believe. The interprobe, you have to look at the reasons that's creating that data.
Absolutely.
How you're going to approach it. Yeah.
Absolutely. As we shift into the final category, we're going to invite you and our audience to take a look at a very short clip. And largely, as you and I have been chatting, Mac, there's a lot of negative imagery surrounding law enforcement, and sometimes it crowds out some of the more positive things that have been taking place. So let's look at the clip for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back and wrap up the interview.
We leave you tonight with some moments.
One second, apologies for the technological.
Of compassion. Recently in Macomb County, Michigan, a sheriff's deputy responded to a report of a man possibly passed out in his car. Turned out to be something much different. Take a look.
So what can I do for you today? You say you don't want to hurt yourself, right? No? Have you ever attempted suicide or anything like that in the past? Okay. Is there anything I can do to help you?
I could use a hug.
I'll give you a hug. It seems like you got a lot going on, man. It's all right. It's all right, man. It seems like a lot to take on,
Dude, we can get you some help.
Yeah, we can get you somebody to talk to and stuff.
As you heard, a second deputy arrived on the scene, and for the next 20 minutes, the two military veterans sat with the man. They listened, they gave him words of encouragement, and they did what they promised. They gave the man in need of a hug the phone number to the local crisis center, and they went even further. Take a look.
It's all right, man. It's all right.
And if you need to talk, if you can't talk to them,
You can call us. Call that number, dude. I'll come out and meet you. I'll sit down and talk with you. You can vent.
all right. That's what I'll do.
All right, brother.
And each day if like it's
Appreciate it.
Hey, if you ever need anything, you just call, all right?
Means a lot.
Yeah, buddy.
Thank you.
That is a master class in compassion and empathy. And a reminder, if you or someone you know is facing a crisis, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Crisis Lifeline at 988. That's 24/7, again, at 988.
Wow. Thoughts, Mac?
Well, that was clearly powerful. And I think I know in my heart that happens more often than people realize. Unfortunately, that does not lead the news. That's not something that, that's not the bleed it leads type story. My police officers would do things like that every day. I remember having a patrol sergeant and an officer going to a shoplifting case at like a Walgreens or something like that. They had the person in custody. We got there. Turned out she was a single mother, had no money. Everything she bought was to feed her kids milk and little things like that. They went and paid the bill and convinced the manager not to file charges. I mean, that happens everywhere. In some of and every time I do a class or a training, I pair up all the police officers that are in the room and I ask them a question. I ask them to think about the best day of their career. And I'll ask them to explain what happened, paint that picture, tell your part, and I pair them up. And Reggie, every one of those stories they're not like, oh, it was the day that I kicked in a burning building and saved, 6 babies and 12 puppies, or it's not, I busted out this mafia crime ring. It's none of those things that we think about policing. It was little things like that, where I remember one story, there was a guy that, I think he was a sheriff's officer, and this belligerent person, the call came through as a belligerent person, was at a motor vehicle division, and he was trying to change the title of his vehicle. Well, it was not an easy case. The car was from out of state, and it was very complicated. Nobody wanted to listen to this guy. Now, this guy was pretty worked up because, dealing with government, we go to DMV. I mean, it's not the most pleasant that we all have to go to. And finally, this guy became belligerent. Nobody wanted to talk to him. They called the police on him. The officer got there. They explained the story to him. He explained the story to him, and he went back in there to find a supervisor and said to that supervisor, you need to help this man, and I'm going to stay here until you help him. And it resolved the problem. I had one officer said she went to a welfare check of a child because this child had been missing school, was going down the wrong direction, and it was just a small 5, 6, 7-year-old kid. Well, the kid's mother was in prison, so the kid was living with the grandmother who was an invalid, and they really had no supervision. That officer ended up adopting that kid.
Wow.
Yeah. And you're like, holy crap, my story means nothing compared to that, right? I mean, all of these stories are little relationship where the officers just took a little extra time and help people. I've had stories where they go to a domestic disturbance, not a violent thing, but the couples are arguing and they did the same thing that officer did. You need help. And they'll come back and say, you saved our marriage, or those stories are more common than we realize. We just don't hear them all the time. So that's powerful. Glad you showed that.
Powerful, and to your point, Matt, clearly many men and women out there every day making sacrifices to keep our neighborhoods safe, particularly in light of recent years of an uptick in crime. But we also have the challenges and struggles with respect to unfortunate incidents that happened recently in Memphis, where all of us were horrified and appalled with the Tyrese Nichols tragedy. What's your assessment of what went wrong? And if you were advising the Memphis chief, Sarah Lynn Davis, in terms of how to restore public confidence, what would you say to her?
Man, that was absolutely awful, and I'm proud of my colleagues, and at least here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and every police chief has come on and stated unequivocally that was wrong. It should have never happened. That's not who we are. That's not what should have happened. No one has supported what these officers did. If I take it back to Minneapolis and the Derek Chauvin and George Floyd issue, look at the leadership in that organization. Minneapolis has had five police chiefs in 10 years. 5 in 10 years. So that's averaging 2 years per chief. I said it took me 2.5 to 3 years to change our culture. How are you going to do that when you have leadership changing constantly? I don't know how many Memphis has had in the last 10 years, but I know this police chief has been there just under 2 years.
Yeah.
And she's the first police chief that came from outside the organization in the last 40 years. So what does that tell you? There's something going on here. I guarantee you, if a reporter or somebody starts looking at the files of these police officers, this is not the first time something like this has happened. There have been indicators in the past, complaints, issues, whether they were sustained or disciplined or not, who knows? Derek Chauvin had 20 such complaints in the past. So it's there. So I think the chief has to look at, first of all, who are you hiring, right? How are you recruiting? Who are you promoting? What kind of training are you doing? I have gone to quite large agencies and I'm doing my thing, and on breaks, I'll have a 15-year veteran, sergeant or lieutenant, say to me, we've never had this type of training. Leadership training. We've never had this type of training. We're good at training at tactics and certification type things to keep our assignment and on weapons and all that stuff. But how often are we training on leadership, servant leadership, on emotional intelligence, on unconscious bias, on these things, on how to de-escalate and how to connect with people? I'm shocked to hear large agencies rarely focus on this. And so when you don't hire from the outside, you know, the problems just kind of continue. And so I'm not saying you should always hire from the outside, but sometimes if you have a person that's been in if you just get transferred to a brand new work group and you get in this brand new work group and brand new environment, and there's a big tree in the middle of the office that makes no sense to you. And you're like, why is that tree in the middle of the office? Shouldn't we move that? Because it's preventing us from doing what we need to do. And everybody else that's been there 10 or 20 years ago, like, what tree? What are you talking about? Well, studies have shown that if that new person, that new supervisor coming in to that new unit doesn't do something within a month, they'll never change anything. I have had patrol supervisors, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, because one of the things I believed in is transferring supervisors. If you're a supervisor in my department, you're going to transfer every 3 years. I can't let you stay at this one unit forever. And so you move people around. You have to learn to do the job, an entire job of running an agency. So you'll get a new supervisor, a new captain in CID, and they're like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? I'm going to change that. And I would say to them, if you don't change it for a month, within a month, you'll never change it. And sure enough, they're doing the same thing. So you have to look at, and that's what I think somebody from the outside. So how do you promote? How do you discipline? Is there a culture of discipline in that organization? You can just find any Jim Collins book and talk about the culture of discipline. And then, are you taking care of your police officers? What kind of leadership are they experiencing? If I come in the organization and I'm treating everyone bad in the organization, treating them with disrespect and not treating them with integrity and treating them as they're just an object and not a person, and I'm upsetting them every day, how are they going to go out and treat the first person they stop? You know, I think Southwest Airlines, which I know have had their issues, but they have a great history. They've said in their past, our employees come first, our customers come second. If I want you to treat our customers right, I need to treat you right. Absolutely. It's not do as I say, not as I do. I have to model that behavior. So how are we treating people? Are we taking care of our police officers? There's studies that have shown that in an average workplace in this country, 65% of workers receive no recognition during the year. There's a study show that 32% of your current employees are looking for another job constantly. There's studies have shown that 33% of your entire organization are engaged employees. They care about the organization, they work their butt off, They're self-initiated, they're leaders. 51% are not engaged.
That's right.
And 16% are actively disengaged. These are the angry, pissed off people, excuse my language, but they infect and influence everyone else.
Yeah.
So why don't we do something about it? Why do we say that's okay? And then add to that the trauma and the experiences the police officers had. You know, the average studies have shown that the average person in this country, the average adult, the average person will experience 3 to 5 traumatic critical events in their lives, 3 to 5 in their lifetime. Police officers will experience hundreds in a year and thousands in a 25-year career.
It's difficult work. Yeah.
Exactly. And in the military, soldiers are deployed an average between 6 months to a year in a combat zone, but yet they have PTSD and they're treated just for 6 months to a year. Police officers have seen trauma and critical incidents in a 25-year period. Hundreds.
Yeah.
I remember I dealt with stuff that 35 years ago, 40 years ago, that I still see in my head, that I will never get out of my head. And how do we deal with that? Are we treating police officers? Are we helping police officers? Are we forcing them to go to therapy? We're doing none of that. You have to man up and shut up and be tough and deal with it. And it's a problem. And these are the people that are out there policing. So when they get triggered, what's going to happen? Are they going to escalate automatically? It's tough, Reggie. It is a real problem in our country. Police officers are committing suicide at a higher rate than ever. And nobody, it's like that guy, he needed a hug. We're not going to ask for a hug. We need to. Who's telling us that we love you? Who's telling us, man, I need you. I need you to be good. I'm helpful, I'm grateful, and I'm proud that our agency worked to do this. We talked constantly. We had indicators of when something was going wrong. I remember we had a police officer that was going through some real emotional issues, and we had to take him off the street, send him to get some help, order him to get some help. Because I'd rather do that than fire him for something that he does. So let's try to salvage that whole person, right?
Absolutely.
We have to connect the technical skills, we have to connect their conceptual skills, and we have to connect with their human skills. We call the hand, the head, and the heart. I need the
hand,
whole
head,
person.
and heart. Absolutely.
I need that whole person every day at their best. So I think there's huge issues with Memphis. I don't know what their culture is, but it should be examined. And sometimes it takes somebody from the outside to come in and say, this is what you need to work on, Chief. And I'm sure she's doing some of those things now.
Perhaps we'll send her Mac Tristan. We could go on for hours, but I'm being reminded that we've got some patient members in our audience, and I'm going to invite my colleague to shift us over to the Q&A portion. Mac, I got to thank you for 37 years of outstanding service, and the service obviously continues, and we'll figure out a way to get you back real soon. Priscilla, it's all yours.
Thank you, Reggie, and thank you, Max. So we have an active audience with a lot of great questions. Our first one is, servant leadership has been described as countercultural. How do we make it more attractive to those in law enforcement who are already face so many challenges in carrying out their duties?
Well, as I said, police officers face so much in their careers, and we have to figure out how to serve them and connect them as a servant leader. The countercultural thing, I think, and what we did, and the important thing is to connect our officers and those potential officers with their purpose, with their why, as Simon Sinek says. What is your why? Why do you exist? Why do you come to work in the morning, and why should anyone care? We don't talk about that enough. I'm so proud of our department, because when we talked about this, we had in our leadership team meetings with our supervisors, our key leaders, we had the importance of connecting with the why. We had to remind them that, why did you become a police officer in the first place? It's interesting, because I ask everyone this when I'm in a class, and I'll say, when you first became a police officer, and the very first time you put on that uniform, and the very first time you went to eat at a restaurant with that uniform on, what did you notice? And every one of them will say, everybody was looking at me. I could feel their eyes looking at me. Police officers now is here. Well, 20 years later, are you still feeling that? Nah, not anymore. They're still looking. Those eyes have not gone away. We were just more aware of it. We have to connect with why that's important. We have to connect with why we got in this job in the first place and the importance of it. And I would tell people constantly, people are counting on you. When people pick up the phone and dial 911, it's because they need help. And the only reason we exist is because that person exists in that house. The only reason we exist is because the public exists. The old concept of serve and protect, that's why we're here. We're not at war with our communities. We're here to help our communities. And so we have to continually remind the importance of the nobility of what we do, the importance of what we do. It's every day, because they hear all the crap just like everybody else. And the reality is, historically, when unemployment is low, and it's record low right now in this country, it's hard to find police officers, because who wants to do this job? So we have to appeal to the core nature of those people that say, I want to do something that makes a difference in this world. Well, policing is right here in your hands. We have to recruit the right people. We have to hire the right people. We have to hire for fit, which means our culture, not for need. I can't say I'm short 100 officers, I just need to go find 100 people. It doesn't work that way. That's the other thing Memphis needs to do, and the chief, I'm sure, needs to realize is you hire for fit, not for need. I'd rather work shorthanded than hire the wrong people and have them here for 20 years, upsetting every person that they come in contact with. That's not who we are. So the countercultural thing, it's more about, again, connecting them with their purpose, the value, how important their role is. And if we're not here, what's going to happen? So that's what we worked on constantly to get them to connect.
That's great. Thank you. Our next question is from Mr. Richard Pieper. His question is, what was the event that caused the greatest growth in you? And to provide some context and a few details.
The event that caused the greatest growth in me. Oh man, I guess.
A lot to reflect.
Yeah, I guess those challenges that we all face in our life, those low moments where you're like, what's going on? We don't talk about it. I struggled with, there was so much happening. There was so much change. There were upset people in the organization. I didn't tolerate, I expected people to be in our own organization. I expected to treat each other with dignity and respect. There was no other option. I'm not going to tolerate somebody that's just rude and mean and ugly and for no reason. And so we held people accountable. And I expected people to do their job. You know, I'm paying you to work 8 hours a day. I think that's not a bad thing to expect. Well, we had some people that just weren't going to do it. And I transferred an individual that was giving his supervisors all kinds of headaches, and he wasn't doing his job. And I ended up getting sued by the police union and their lawyers because of whatever reason. Well, those things don't go away right away. That's a 3-4 year process. And it hurt. It depleted me. I remember having a conversation with my chief, and I said, just let him have his job back. I'm done. I can't deal with the negativity anymore. It almost destroyed me. That led to a form of depression. That led to anxiety. That led to questioning my own existence and purpose. And I never told anyone. And it scared me to death, because if I can't get in front of a group of people and I'm a leader, I'm an assistant chief, I'm worthless. And it scared me, like I have to resign, I have to quit my career. And I didn't want to get help because we're supposed to tough this out. I ended up getting help, and thank God I did. And now you hear it and thankfully now people are talking about it, because it impacted me in an incredibly negative way. It impacted my family, it impacted my wife, it led to a divorce. It was terrible. And so I'm grateful I had great support. You know, when you're in that dark valley, two things have to happen. Number one, you have to be disciplined enough to kick yourself in the butt and get out of that dark valley. And number two, you got to ask for help. And sometimes we refuse to do either. And the result is you stay in that dark valley and you're in horrible shape, and you're no good at work and you're no good at home. And thankfully, I knew I needed help. That was one of the darkest times in my career. I learned from it. I grew from it. I became better, I think, as a person and as a father and as a leader and whoever, a friend. And thankfully, thank God I got through it. That individual ended up leaving the organization. We won the lawsuit every step of the way, but it depleted me. And at the end, courts ruled on our side, and you know, that was the end of that. It was a happy story at the end, but it was hell going through. And I do not envy anyone. And I don't recommend anybody go through that. But if you're going through that, there's help and you can work through it. And that's kind of where I'm at. Didn't intend to tell that story, but that was hard.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I can imagine, and definitely it's important to reach out, ask for help. I know that's something that's hard, but it's the best thing that we can do once we do it. So we'll take a few more questions. Our next one is, what is an aspect of servant leadership that you believe is the most important to use in law enforcement?
Well, I think out of the 10 characteristics, listening is the most important. Listening builds trust. Listening allows you to connect with people. Listening allows you to help people. We can't help anyone if we can't listen. And listening leads to healing, which is another characteristic of servant leadership. There's a lot of problems in our country today. There's problems between individuals. And if I'm having a horrible argument with my wife, and it escalates and it gets emotional, and you know, I've known through the years that we tend to hurt those that we love the most because we know the buttons to push, and horrible things are said, and it escalates, and there's an emotional issue, and it's just horrible argument. We can't resolve that argument. We cannot move forward unless we heal. And we can't heal unless we're willing to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my part. I'm sorry this happened. Let's get a plan to do better. Look at what's happening in our communities, and one death after another after another. At some point, you can't heal until you resolve those issues. And there's numerous police chiefs in this country that have come forward, and probably maybe some people said they were wrong for doing this, and I applaud them for it, where they're saying what the practices of this organization have violated people's rights, have impacted people of color, and we were wrong. And I'm sorry, and we will do better. The healing is just as important. We have to listen. We have to connect. And then what? Well, we have to heal. The healing of relationships and the healing of communities are the most important, I believe, where we're at right now in our country.
Definitely. I feel like that's a good segue to our last question we have here. So what, if anything, regarding reforms in law enforcement gives you hope for today?
Wow. I think as I move on and as I hear these officers when I'm speaking to them, the core, the spirit of their culture is still there. Those people that joined this profession for the right reasons are still there. There are some leaders in policing that I think are hurting us, and they need to move on. But the core of the spirit of these people that do this job for the right reason is there. And we have incredible leaders that are stepping forward and telling their people every day, I love you and I care about you. And it's important that I make that connection in order for us to get better. There are leaders that will never say, I love you. And we're talking about agape love, love for humankind, for other people. And, you know, we talk about the brotherhood. Well, how are we going to have a brotherhood in law enforcement if I can't tell you I love you and I care about you? We've had people that I demoted. There have been people that my predecessor in Coppell has demoted because they weren't doing their in their rank. And when they're having their disciplinary hearing and they're saying, you're going to get demoted. And then the person will say, I thought you were going to fire me. Why didn't you fire me? Why aren't you firing me? And they said, because I love you, because we love you, and because we care about you, and we think you still have something to offer for this organization. We need to be able to speak of that more and make that known. I don't care how uncomfortable it is. It's what connects us for the job that we're trying to do and trying to accomplish. And it's about treating my people right in order that they'll treat their customers right and their troops right. Instead of having a bunch of angry, upset, us against them cops, which I don't need, we have a group of people that care about their community and care about serving their community in the right way.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Mac, once again for being a part of our Coffee with webinar series. I feel like if we didn't have a limit, we could probably go on all day talking with you because you have some great stories and great reflections to share.
I agree. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you. And for our audience, please stay hold. We have a few announcements to share. So our next Coffee with webinar will be with Howard Bihar, the former president of Starbucks International, and we are inviting you to join us in a conversation about the company's continued efforts to invest in its employees and put people first. You can scan the QR code or as well go to our website to register for this webinar. If you are interested in starting your servant leader journey or continuing it or finding more about it, we have registration spots open for our Foundations of Servant Leadership course beginning March 16th on Thursdays from 7 to 8:30 p.m. You can use the QR code or go on our website, greenleaf.org, to learn more about the course content, the readings, the list, so that you can begin your journey today. And if you would like to learn about any other programming at the Greenleaf Center, please make sure to visit our website, follow us on social media to stay tuned and updated with what's going on. And as you log off, please be sure to take our survey. Thank you everyone for joining our Coffee with webinar.